Hello, I'm Dan Smith, President of Capsim Management Simulations. In this week's teaching tip, I'd like to explore the question, what is the best way to introduce capstone or foundation? Which leads to a closely related question, when is the best time to introduce the simulation? At the beginning of the class, in the middle, or towards the end? Of course, the word best is subject to interpretation and very much a matter of personal taste. If something's working for you, then that's the method that's best for you, and I wouldn't recommend changing it. But I do have an unusual perspective. Beyond my own classroom experiences, I get to see the outcomes of literally thousands of other classrooms. In my view, the best way to introduce a simulation is to get students working on the first day of class. I can offer two motivations. First, getting students started at the very beginning of a class primes them for content that will appear later in the course. Second, it creates an atmosphere that's somewhat different from other classrooms. An atmosphere that features three characteristics: emotionally charged, physically invigorating, and repetitive. Many professors are concerned about the sequence of events. Normally, we teach a topic, then we ask students to apply the teaching, then we critique the students' work. But a simulation differs from other teaching methods in one key aspect. Simulations are about failure in high-risk environments. Training simulators in general show up in complex high-risk environments like aviation or medicine or security. Simulations create a safe place to fail. Failure primes the students to pay close attention to things that matter. They can pick themselves up and try again. In a business simulation, we want students to try things before they are ready. We insert into the course design three places for a restart: the rehearsal simulation, the practice rounds, and then the actual competition. For example, suppose that one of the learning objectives revolves around a company's mission and vision. The syllabus calls for teaching the topic in week 4. If we ask students to give us a mission statement in week 2, they'll be forced to grapple with the problem before it's taught. Chances are they'll do a bad job. Not a problem. In week 2, the students are still in the practice rounds. When we finally get to the topic in week 4, they'll be primed for it. They'll want to learn about mission and vision because they've already struggled with it. They understand why it's important, and they're about to begin the competition for real. Okay, let's return to this idea of the classroom atmosphere. At its core, a simulation's a game. And like all games, it's emotionally charged, physically invigorating, and repetitive. Emotionally charged. In the game, students will feel moments of elation, despair, surprise, anxiety. Physically invigorating. A simulation involves all of the senses. They even smell their teammates. They argue, they gesture, they laugh, they groan. Repetitive. A simulation involves multiple rounds, multiple market segments, multiple products, etc. We want to reinforce both behaviors and skills. We want them to both evaluate their skills and improve upon them. Now, why is that important? Well, recently there's been much research into how the brain lays down memories. Our brains are wired to remember things that are important and to forget the unimportant. But how does it decide what's important and what's not? The research suggests that we remember things that are highly charged emotionally, that occur in a high sensory environment, and that involve repetition. Now consider a simulation like capstone or foundation. What can we do to engage the students' emotions from the moment they first step into the classroom? 1. Compare the simulation with the real world. Ask the students questions like, have you ever run a company? What do people in the real world expect you to be able to do upon graduation? Do you have what it takes to succeed out there? And how do you know? 2, point out that a simulation is not quite like the real world. If they fail, nobody will lose their job. I often tell a story at this point that I'd like to share with professors. Chances are you can come up with something similar. What is the worst moment in a manager's career? The thing that haunts them for years later? For me, the worst moment came when I had to fire someone who had done nothing to deserve it. I called them into my office and I said, "I'm sorry, you're fired. I know that you have done nothing wrong. I know that this will affect your career, your family, your money situation. But the simple truth is, I made a mistake, it hurt the business, and now I have to let you go. I'm deeply sorry. Next, build on that. Highlight their personal risks in the simulation. So I'll say something like this to students. In a simulation, nobody loses their job. Nobody loses any real money. In fact, the worst that can happen is that you will feel embarrassed. I feel it's my duty to embarrass you. When you make a mistake, I'm going to take whatever silly thing you did, put it up on the display, and go through it in excruciating detail for the delight of your competitors. Better that you're embarrassed here in the classroom than suffer the consequences imposed in the real world. 4, get them into teams. If possible, I put the students in teams in the first class. Now, granted, this may not be possible for you, or you might want to delay team formation for other reasons. But whenever you form teams, make it a highly charged event. There are dozens of ways. Select team captains and ask them to choose teammates, or ask them to post resumes and apply for a job. Have competitions to win a slot as CEO. The key point is that as human beings, we're wired to interact with one another, to make first impressions, to socialize. It drives the emotions, and we can tap into that to add whatever lessons we want to make. 5, give them something to do. If I've done my job right, I have their emotions going. They've felt everything from dread to excitement. It's now important to get them to feel they are up to the challenge. The best way to do that is to put them to work. My favorites are getting started assignment, the rehearsal simulation, the situation analysis, a quick logistical practice round. The key thing is to get them doing something. The emotions create the energy, and now we want them to burn it on something useful. We've attached a white paper called Kicking Off the Simulation to this webpage. It discusses the first class, the getting started assignment, the rehearsal simulation, and other tools at your disposal to get students working. Thanks for listening. Next week, we'll jump to the end of the simulation to discuss a topic proposed by Professor Doug Guth at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Doug asks, how does one limit endgame strategies like selling all or most of your capacity in the last rounds to improve your financial ratios? It's a great question, and I'm looking forward to exploring it. If you have a question you would like to explore, or if you have an idea or a teaching technique that you'd like to offer, please send it to me. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week.